right, good morning, church. How you guys doing? Are you ready for this? Junior church, you're dismissed. 2 weeks in a row, I think I'm good now. We'll see, you never know. But good to be here. It's good that the weather is finally cooperating just a little bit. New video. Oh, experiencing some errors. I already have that already. Oh my goodness. Guys, I want to share with you something this morning. I want to share with you it's basically a story that I heard a little while back. It's about a guy who married the love of his life. Okay? This is not a me story, although that's true. Married the love of his life. All right? Beautiful woman, blonde hair, blue eyes, the sweetest person you'd ever meet. She would do anything for anyone. So it's very wonderful. But if she had two flaws, for sure, one would be she wasn't very bright, and the other one was she was a little overly emotional. And guys, I know you're thinking, women overly emotional? No, it doesn't happen, but it's true, it's true. She's overly emotional. Example, she called him while he was at work one day, and she was crying, and she said, I need you to come home. She was just really, really distraught, tears, crying, complaining, I need you to come home. And he said, all right, just relax, calm down. Okay, just tell me what the problem is, and maybe I can help. And she said, you're going to think it's silly. He said, I'm not going to think it's silly. Just tell me what the problem is. She said, all right, I'm working on this puzzle, and I'm trying to put it together, and I'm frustrated. I can tell you, I'm not a puzzle guy, so I can relate immediately to what she's talking about. She says, I can't figure it out. It's stressing me bad, really bad, and I just need you here. And he said, all right, just relax. You know I'm good at puzzles. What's the puzzle supposed to be? And she said, well, the picture in the box is a tiger, but I just can't get it. He says, all right, just relax. I'll leave and I'll come home. And so he hangs up, leaves a couple minutes later, comes home, he gets there, he walks in the door, and she is shaking visibly. She's shaking, she's crying. He hugs her, he just holds her for like a minute straight, and he says, let's go see what's going on. Let's see if we can help you. And so sure enough, they walk into the dining room, and there's the puzzle, the box is right there. It's a tiger, the pieces are all laid out on the table, and she is a mess. And he says, all right, listen, sweetie, just sit down. I want you to relax. I'm going to go make some hot tea for you. And when I come back, you're going to drink all the tea. It's going to be all right, I promise. Drink all the tea, and then we're going to put all the Frosted Flakes back in the box. Told you she wasn't very bright. Usually the blonde women in the crowd are like, I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up. Listen, guys, I use that illustration because it really fits where we're at, specifically in the text today. Because we're taking our sermon series for the year. Remember, our Living in the Red, right there on the screen. And the concept is looking at the red letter words of Jesus that we have in the Bibles. And like the video said, what if everything in our lives boiled down to just the words of Jesus? And are you all in? And having that concept. And then that concept that comes in with that illustration. Guys, we see it in the text today, these religious leaders. There's going to be a tough talk, and Jesus is going to have a tough talk with these guys. And they have this image of Jesus. Right, this image of, that is the image, I shouldn't say that because they do have an image of Jesus. You're going to see that it's not a good one. But they have this image of God, of the Messiah, what he's supposed to look like, who he's supposed to be. And the problem is that the pieces that are laid out in front of them don't match anything to what Jesus really, really looks like and who he really is. And so you're going to see it's a very tough discussion. In fact, one of the most difficult ones that Jesus has with the religious leaders of his day. We find it, if you have your Bibles, in John chapter 8. If you're going to go ahead and turn to John chapter 8. If you have your Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, New Testament, John chapter 8. If you have your smartphones, your tablets, your iPads, any kind of electronic device of any sort that you can use your Bible app, go ahead and open up John chapter 8. As you guys are turning there, I want to share with you again the key verse that's leading us through the entire year. You don't have to turn to it. You guys are going to have it memorized by the time we get done with this series, by the end of this year. But it's Acts chapter 4. And again, what's going on, just very briefly, two of Jesus' disciples, Peter and Paul, are standing before the Sanhedrin. These are the religious elite leaders of that day. And Jesus had already ascended to heaven. The church is experiencing this growth. And as they're standing there in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, it says this: when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. And so guys, that's the purpose. Obviously, we want to learn more about Jesus, but that's not the intent. We want to learn who Jesus really, really is, and digging deeper. And it's my desire that as we go through this series, not all the way to the end, but before that, long before that, that people can look at us and say, I can tell that you spent time with Jesus. And so that's why we're doing it. And so if you guys are ready, we got a lot of ground to cover today. A tough talk, like I said. Now as we go through this discussion that Jesus has, I kind of think about this pan of water. Right? You put water in the pan, you set it on the stove, and you crank up the heat on high. We're gonna watch that as the discussion, as the dialogue ensues over the course of the sermon, because you're gonna see it's gonna go from cold to warming up really, really quickly within the first couple statements. And then we're going to watch as it boils and bubbles over through the course as well. So if you have your Bibles and you guys are ready, let's get started. John chapter 8, let's start reading verse 31. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free? See, they're already starting to get amped up, aren't they? Jesus replied, very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. And you can already see that it's starting to heat up, right? There's like a Spinal Tap moment, right? They go to 11. Like immediately, it's like a 0, and then boom, it's just they escalate. Jesus he has a tough crowd. It's kind of a mixed bag in the crowd. Okay, you have some that want to believe him, and then you have others that just straight up want to kill him. The problem is there's a fine line between the two of them, and the ones who want to believe in him, or want to believe him, they're very young in that belief. You know, they're new to this, and Jesus is making some really, really bold claims. And he starts off just by saying, look, if you guys want to be my disciples, then you got to walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. There's obedience involved. If you obey my teaching, then what happens is you'll know the truth. And then when you know the truth will set you free. I love that whole idea of truth. We'll get to what they respond, because they say the most ridiculous thing they could ever say, ever, right? But I love that concept of truth. You know, you think about Jesus as he was standing before Pilate, right? And Pilate is asking in a very dismissive manner, what is truth, right? As he says that to Jesus and he walks away. And the implication is that truth was standing right in front of him. You know, capital T, truth. See, truth isn't just necessarily a logic, it's Jesus. And Jesus was making a clear point. He says, listen, I am truth. And a relationship, that personal relationship with me, is what will set you free. Now, guys, let me pause. Women, you're okay. Guys, let me pause for a second, because I know how you are. I'm a guy. We don't want to hear about a relationship with another guy, right? We're not wired that way. We don't think those thoughts, but I want you to understand, every single aspect of your life revolves around relationships. Period. Your working relationship with your spouse, or your girlfriend. I should say wife, I guess. Really, I would say spouse. I'm talking to guys only. So your wife, your girlfriends, your boss, your children, your neighbors. Honestly, every single aspect of your life revolves around relationships, and God is a relational being. In the cool of the day, we're told that God would walk with Adam in the Garden of Eden. I don't know if he needed to do that, but he chose to be relational. You see, Jesus, he's very intentional relational. He told 12 disciples, narrows it down to 3. He spends a lot of time with those 3. He's a very relational God. So don't get hung up on that and think that, you know, that's like feminine talk, okay? It's not. It really does come down to your relationship with Jesus Christ. And he is truth. And again, they don't get it. They immediately go to 11, right? This is off the scale. And they say the ridiculous thing they could possibly say. They say, are you kidding me? We're Abraham's descendants. We've never been slaves of anyone. Like, oh, really? Are they forgetting about the time back here in Egypt? You know, all that political enslavement? You guys remember that, right? They moved to the land of Goshen. Just not this Goshen, because it was warmer. Land of Goshen. And then from there, right into that. The enslavement there with Egypt. Well, how about, okay, Babylon after that? How about Syria after that? How about, even in the point of the text where we're at, the political enslavement to Rome? I mean, what? It's the dumbest thing they could possibly say. It's the most ludicrous statement they could make. Unless, of course, they're thinking in a spiritual sense. You know, we're Abraham's descendants. We've never been enslaved. How could you say we need to be set free? I mean, Jesus even talks about sin. And he's saying, here's the deal, guys. Yeah, not so much. A descendant, sure. And you're going to see, but a child of Abraham, that's a different story. And he's saying, look, there's sin. There's sin in the camp. And one who sins is a slave to sin. And he's connecting those dots. And of course, they're not getting it. They're not getting the spiritual connection there. They're just going... And think of this, too. Jesus could have gone straight back to history and given a full entire history lesson, much better than I can at this point, and said, really? Never been enslaved? Well, let's just take a look. And he could have gone down the list. But he went straight to the heart of the matter, because it's a matter of the heart. He goes straight to their position or their standing in God, and he says, here's the deal. When you sin, you're a slave to sin. And just because you're a descendant of Abraham, but that doesn't mean, okay, you live in that house, but that doesn't mean that you're a son. That doesn't mean that you're the child. That doesn't mean you're that family member, right? Because slaves could live in the homes. And so that's why he kind of bounces back and says, well, here's the deal. You can be in the house, but that doesn't mean that you're the son. Because the son is part of the family. And only the Son can set you free. And when he does, when he sets you free, you are free indeed. I love the strength that I get from that. I love the peace that I get from that, knowing that Jesus does set us free. It's kind of going back last week to looking at that concept of the Messiah. And Jesus is saying, it's me, I'm here, it's me right here, guys, I'm the Messiah. And that concept of Jubilee, that he has canceled our debts. And we're no longer in bondage to sin because he's paid our debt with his blood on the cross. So you can see the conversation is starting to heat up. It's starting to get a little intense. We got a little bit now, we probably got some steam rising off the pan here. Maybe those, I don't know how to explain this because I don't cook much. I grill, but not cooking. Although I do cook well, right? Yes, I did. Mac and cheese. Now anyways, you get some steam coming off the pan. You got those little bubbles that are coming up off the sides, right? Not those big bubbles in the middle. We're going to get there. In fact, we're going to get to a point where I think the pan just basically explodes before we're done with the message. Okay, so Jesus says the Son will set you free. Let's continue reading. Verse 37. Jesus says, I know that you are Abraham's descendants, yet you're looking for a way to kill me, because you have no room for my word. I'm telling you what I've seen in the Father's presence, and you are doing what you have heard from your father. Now it gets up again here. Abraham is our father, right? They're getting fussy. Abraham is our father, they answered. If you were Abraham's children, Jesus said, you would do what Abraham did. Guys, it's getting intense. Just in one word, what was Abraham known for in the Bible? Just faith. Yeah, faith. Faith. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There are tons of verses I could share with you right now, but I won't, of Abraham's faith and where it's recorded in the Bible. But Jesus is saying this. He's saying, here's the deal. If you're really, okay, descendant, yes, but a child of Abraham, I don't think so. Because if you were, the mark of Abraham is faith, and then you would be exhibiting faith. You would have faith in God that I am who I say I am. And so, it continues. Verse 40. He continues, Jesus says this, as it is you're looking for a way to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God, Abraham did not do such things. You are doing the works of your own father. We are not illegitimate children, they protested. The only father we have is God himself. Okay, so again, we're getting some bubbles. Now it's starting to boil up. They're protesting. They don't like what he's saying. Now they're not going to catch everything that he says, but some things, they're going to hit the mark. And they're saying, look, here's the deal. We have God as our Father. We are the one true and pure followers of God. He's our follower. We're good to go. And I'm just going to tell you, Jesus, he's really experiencing some very intense BS from these guys. Belief systems. What do you think I meant? Your belief systems, exactly. Very intense belief systems from these guys. Look, we do the same thing, right? They're believing. No, here's the deal. Let's see. I see. Oh yes, we are the true followers of God. Yeah, it really do. Jesus, I don't know what you're talking about. They're just kind of throwing back. They're lashing back. This is like a spitting match. This is kind of like I know you are, but what am I? This kind of thing. This is the mindset that they're taking as this goes through. Now Jesus, he's starting to lay down the gauntlet. I mean, he's harsh, but he's justified in what he's saying. They're just not picking it up. And Jesus says this, verse 42. If God were your Father, you would love me, for I've come here from God. In other words, he's really saying, look guys, if you love God, you'll love his children. I'm a child of God, so you should love me. Because you don't love me, so you're doing this circular logic. If you don't love me, it really means you don't love God. Now it's on, right? He continues. I've not come on my own, God sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you're unable to hear what I say. I love that he asks the question and then he answers it. Verse 44, you belong to your father, the devil. Oh, now it's getting ugly. And you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he's a liar, and he is the father of lies. Yet because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. Can any of you prove me guilty of sin? All right, just pause there for a moment. That verse right there too. If you ever wonder, if you ever question, if Jesus was ever truly sinless, I think that verse really kind of sums it up. I think it kind of locks it in right there. Because like I feel comfortable standing here in front of all of you. I feel loved. I feel supported. Okay, this is a safe environment for me. But I would never stand here and say, "All right, guys, sins. Go ahead and throw them at me. What am I guilty of?" It's just not going to happen because I wouldn't do that. It would just be silly. Jesus, you got to think of where he's at. He's standing before this crowd of people that just really hate him. Now, again, it's a mixed bag, but there's the majority of the crowd, they're not his friends, they're his enemies. And so standing in front of his enemies and saying, here's the deal, just show me where I've sinned, and they can't. They don't even try. The text doesn't even record it. And it's because they don't have a leg to stand on. I think they know that. So Jesus continues. He says this, if I'm telling you the truth, why don't you believe me? Great question. 47. Whoever belongs to God hears what God says. The reason you do not hear is that you do not belong to God. Okay, so now we've got some bubbles, for sure. Now the pan is boiling. We got heat, we got steam, we got bubbles coming up. This is intense. You don't hear because you don't belong to God. I mean, Jesus is just throwing it down right there. It reminds me of the guy who went to visit his friend. Now this guy lived in the country, and when I mean country, I mean he lived off the grid, no electricity, no running water, living off the land. That kind of, your neighbor is 100 miles away. That kind of country. And he went to visit his friend in New York City. And as they're walking down the sidewalk one particular evening, it was very crowded, as New York typically is. Very loud conversations going on, as it typically is. Traffic zooming by. Well, I don't know that that's typical for New York. I usually see them like gridlocked, but there's traffic, so there's noise again. But there's just a lot of noise and a lot of chaos going on. And as they're walking, this man from the country stops and he says, "You hear the crickets over here?" And his friend thinks he's just being foolish. There's no way in the world. With all the chaos, all the noise that's going on, there's no way you can hear crickets over there. And he says, "But I do. Because I grew up and I hear them. And I've heard them my whole life. And so I hear them over here. Why don't you hear them? The guy's like, are you kidding me? With all this noise, I don't hear anything. I certainly don't hear crickets. And the guy says, it's simple. You hear what you want to hear. You hear what's important to you. Let me prove it this way. So he takes a quarter out of his pocket. I think I'm going in and out. It's not my voice. That would be funny if I started doing that now. So he takes a coin. Sorry. I'll overdub that on the video. So he takes a quarter out of his pocket and he flips it and it starts bouncing on the ground and people stop and they start looking for the coin. Guys, it's a really simple fact that we listen, we hear what's important to us. And Jesus is saying, listen, here's the deal. You don't hear me because I'm not important to you. Because what does he say? You don't belong to God. That's big. That's big. The water is boiling. It's all over the place. You don't belong to God. Now listen, the Jews there are hearing two conflicting voices. All right, they're hearing the voice of God over here through Jesus, and they're hearing the voice of Satan over here. And they're going to listen to the one that's most familiar to them, and we do the same thing, right? The problem, though, is that Satan is going to fill your head with lies. I have a book that I absolutely love. I hand out to anybody who wants to read it. I've read it several times. It's called Telling Yourself the Truth. And it really comes down to this concept of we get bombarded with so much that Satan throws in our heads, trying to tear us down, trying to bring us down, trying to pull us away from God, and they're lies. Some of the things in there now, you got to think, depending on your lifestyle, some of those things can be true. He doesn't have to lie if he can just use the truth and tell you that you're doing things that are wrong. But the majority of what he says is just going to be a lie. And so you get just bombarded with what's going on. And we know that the text, 1 Peter says that Satan is like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Probably does desire as well, too, to devour us. And so the concept is that, you've got this loud, like a locomotive running through your head. It's noisy because it can be. Because he's just throwing lies in there. And so if you're here this morning and you've been told, right, in your head, you hear it, that you're no good, that you're worthless, that you have no value, right? If you feel like your prayers don't even make it to the ceiling, that God doesn't love you, that they kicked you to the curb and you're not important, I want you to know you're listening to the wrong voice. Because Jesus is over here and he's calling out. And he says, I'm the good shepherd. And you know what? The sheep, they hear my voice and they know my voice. And so we just have to listen. We have to be intent on listening for Jesus' voice among all the chaos that's out there. When Jesus made it clear, he said, look, there's a shepherd who had 100 sheep and he had 99. One got away. One took off. He left the 99 and went after the one. That's just telling you that God cares about you, that he loves you. And so you've got to listen for his voice. If he's important, that's the kicker. If he's important, you'll hear his voice over the chaos. And that's what he's trying to say. And they didn't hear his voice. They discarded his voice because he was not important to them. And essentially, God wasn't important to them. So that's it. And then he continues on. This is how the conversation goes now. Now the Jews answered, verse 48. They say this, aren't we right in saying that you are a Samaritan and demon-possessed? Now they know he's not a Samaritan, but that's just kind of it's a really bad insult. That's kind of like a four-letter word. You're ugly and no one dresses you funny. Again, it's just this verbal bash back and forth. It's this spitting match that's going on, and we're going to see, because the water's boiling, we're going to get to there where I honestly think the pan just blows up. I was going to say it was going to melt, but I think it explodes. So they say, all right, aren't we right in saying you're a Samaritan and demon-possessed? In verse 49, Jesus answered, I'm not possessed by a demon, but I honor my Father and you dishonor me. I'm not seeking glory for myself, but there is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Very truly, I tell you, whoever obeys my word will never see death. At this they exclaimed, now we know that you are demon-possessed. Abraham died and so did the prophets, yet you say that whoever obeys your word will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham? He died, and so did the prophets. Who do you think you are? Good question. Bad way to throw it in there. It's very disrespectful, but a good question. We should be asking, who is Jesus? And Jesus replied, if I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me. Though you do not know him, I know him. If I said I did not, I would be a liar, just like you. But I do know him, and I obey his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day, and he saw it and was glad. Okay, so at this point, again, they're not going to get everything that he's saying, but there are some things that are going to connect. There's some dots that are going to just make sense. They're going to connect for them. And when he says, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced, I'm not sure where they're at. I know they're angry. We already know that. We already get that. But I'm kind of wondering if they're just a little bit fuzzy, a little bit curious, a little bit confused. What in the world? Because Abraham was like 2,000 years before Jesus. So to be able to see the day, they're kind of equating. Okay, he's making himself contemporary with Abraham. What in the world? Where is he going with this? And they reply back and say, "You're not even 50 years old. Have you seen Abraham?" They're starting to get something. They're starting to connect the dots. This is pain over here, now it's boiling all over the place. Bubbles everywhere, and it's about to explode in just a second, guys. Because listen, I know we talked about this before, that we think Jesus was a good man, and he was, but he was more than that. And we think that he was a good prophet, a great prophet, and he was, but he was more than that. He was a good teacher, but he was more than that. But listen, the next verse is going to completely absolve you from thinking that he was ever just a good man, or just a prophet, or just a wise teacher. It's going to absolve you from that completely, 100%, okay? Because this is what it says. This is our key verse for the day. Jesus says this in verse 58. Very truly I tell you, before Abraham was born, I am. You're going to get that. Now some of you, you might get flustered at that, right? The wording on that. We would say before Abraham was born, I was. Right? Because some of you are, English majors, English teachers, speak the English language, right? It's just kind of normal, but what he's saying is significant, and it's profound, and they got it immediately. You see, for us, we got to go back a little bit to Exodus chapter 3, where Moses is standing before that burning bush, and God is speaking to Moses from that bush. And when he's trying to tell him, he's kind of talked Moses into going and doing these things. He's trying to talk him into, come on, Moses, I need you to go. Come on, go get my people, set them free. Come on, lead them out. I'm going to be with you. Let's do this. And he's kind of got to talk him into it. And finally, Moses says, all right, I'll do it. Who do I tell them sent me? And God says, you tell them, I am sent you. It's a name for God, and they would have got that. In fact, they did get that, because they are tripping in the hood big time at this point. And as the text continues, and we're not even going to go there, they start to pick up stones. And in fact, the way it's worded there in the Greek is that they were in the process of stoning him. So they weren't just picking them up and kind of tossing them in their hand and hang out. They were picking up and getting ready to start launching stones at him for what he said, because they made that connection. He's claiming, wow. He's claiming something no one else would dare claim. He's equating himself with God in a sense. He's saying, look, essentially he's like, before Abraham was born, I was, I am, and I will be. Okay? That's where I'm at. And so they get that. They understand that. And he's making that connection, kind of like last week when he makes the connection with Isaiah back into the present. He says, this is me. This is me. I'm the Messiah. And they got it. Right? When they started to understand, remember, they had two choices. They accept him or reject him. And what they do, they drove him out of the city and they tried to kill him. Same thing in the text today. They can accept him or they can reject him. And so what do? They pick up stones to try to stone him. And they're not getting it. They're connecting some dots, but they're not understanding that it's Jesus standing in front of them. Jesus, eternal, God in the flesh. Truth, right? Truth, guys. And the truth will set you free. And they don't get it. And they don't see it. And they just want to reject him. Guys, they have this image over here. This image over here doesn't match up with Jesus standing right in front of them. Whether that's the image of God that they've got in their minds as the crowd, whether that's the image that they have of the Messiah, I don't know. But I know that it doesn't match up with the